to Mars Hill on Sunday. I'm going to make that long drive from Denver to North Carolina, and so I'm going to take a buddy, and I told him I'd have to show him around there. So I'll be over there on next week.
Cool. That's great.
And so I'm going to take a buddy, and I told him I'd have to show him around there. So I'll be over there on next week.
Cool. That's great.
And Victor, you got to mute that live stream because we're hearing it coming back. Okay. Victor, is that what was going on? Victor's our meeting host here.
Yeah, sorry.
That's all right. We were hearing it back over your mic, and it was like an echo of the conversation we were having, which is all good. Have you seen Speaker Voss show up in the?
He has not. JJ's in there, Susan and Jennifer, but no one else yet.
All right. Go ahead. Because it's inside of 10 minutes. Just go ahead and let everybody in, and we'll figure it out with Robin later.
Okay.
Hey, Victor, put the cover of the book on there just because it's cool looking and start building, if you don't mind. The first page. There you go. How many things are you juggling, Victor? Like 300 right now?
Yeah, I'm trying to make sure I started the live stream. I'm trying to make sure it is actually working.
I could try to go.
I wonder if I had to.
Sacrifice. Sorry, that's me. I'll mute. So Victor, I don't see it when you go to YouTube NCSL.org. When you go to YouTube NCSL.org.
Yeah, I don't see it either. Let me keep playing with it.
Okay. Sacrifice. Hey, Victor, looks like it's working now, man.
Yep.
Perfect. You can both see it?
Hey, Victor, looks like it's working now. Man. Sorry.
It is on a delay, just as an FYI for everybody.
Perfect. I'm going to close that so we don't get a whole lot of feedback when it's up and running.
Senator Hansel, is that you calling in?
Yes, I'm already hooked up.
Great.
Deja vu.
Right.
I think I've seen some of you people already today.
You recognize this outfit? Yeah.
I changed my background, but not the outfit.
I thought this morning's meeting went great. It was nice and to the point and somewhat brief. So very good.
Yeah, on a Friday, we all appreciate that, don't we?
Yeah. Yes.
I feel like I'm
Exactly.
starting to fade. I'm starting to melt here.
Yeah.
And with sessions starting on Monday, I just gotta keep it going.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Linda. For everyone on the call earlier today, I want you to know that my dogs have been shipped off to the glue factory. It was the last.
Gonna have them stuffed and put on the shelf behind you?
Yeah, they'll make a nice rug. That's
Nice.
they're awesome dogs, and it was just that has not happened in the 3 months I've been doing this. Just of course it was right on schedule. So
It's always when it's more and the more important the meeting, the more likely that is to happen. I think that's an inverse relationship.
so true.
Hey, Tim, I just sent you a text.
Okay.
You're in trouble.
Yeah, he does.
Okay.
Gene's
Thanks.
texting me about the script for Speaker Voss, who should be getting on here shortly. So I think he's good to go on that.
Thank you, sir.
I'm letting him in right now.
There's our fearless chair, El Presidente.
I am on time.
You're always on time.
Well, with Zoom, it's pretty hard to be late.
Yeah.
As the name implies, right?
Speaker Voss, I'm guessing you are at your factory. That is of your various backgrounds. That's one I haven't seen yet, I guess. So that's
You
your
are
factory.
correct. We just did a cost-cutting manager meeting at my factory where we were all brainstorming ideas to save money. So I feel like I'm right on track.
Good times.
It is good times. Luckily for us, people eat a lot of food, so it's okay.
Especially now.
What
They
is your
sure do.
biggest? I don't know that everybody knows that, Speaker Voss. What is your biggest seller? Just I'm curious. Is it the popcorn?
It used to be popcorn, so that's about half of our revenue. But when people can't go to a basketball arena or a golf course or a movie theater,
Yeah.
not our biggest revenue now. Now we do, so we're doing pumpkin seeds. If you ever go to Costco, any pumpkin seeds you buy in Costco is ours. We do this big flower project we're doing for Walmart. So we have about 70 employees. So yeah, a lot of stuff going on. We actually just put an offer in to build a new building today. So that's exciting.
Oh, that is exciting. Wow.
Hey,
Expanding.
when
yeah.
times are tough, that's when you got to step up, right?
Yeah.
All right. So I think we'll probably wait a couple more minutes because it's only just 1 o'clock on my computer. Hey, Tim, have you taken care of the dog problem?
You missed just before you got on. I told everybody that I took them to the glue factory. It was time. So that was the. No, they're great dogs. It was 3 months that has not happened to me. For everybody who wasn't on the budget call this morning, after 3 months of my dogs roaming around during Zoom calls and always being good dogs, they decided to go crazy because there was another dog outside barking. But they are sequestered now. They are no longer part of this scene. That will not happen again.
No worries.
Evans from Illinois is here. How you all doing?
Good. Appreciate you checking in.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Sue Russom from Illinois is here too.
Oh, Sue, good to see you.
You too, Tim. How are you?
Very good.
John Cavanaugh from Arizona.
All right, John.
Yeah,
Hey, Robin, Wayne
Football
Harper from Utah.
Massachusetts.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Hey, Angelo.
How you doing? I'm calling in via phone, so I won't have the video, but we got the audio, I believe, right? Everybody hear me?
Yeah, sounds good. Because you have to make a report coming up. So.
Yep.
Hey, Robin, Wayne Harper. I'm on.
Marilyn Ryan, Montana, CSG.
Awesome.
Charlotte
Sabrina Llewellyn,
Cardinale,
Arkansas Senate.
Hawaii.
Yeah, it's fun to hear from kind of the state roll call here. You know, we will not have time to do sort of intros and introductions. I kind of like you guys all checking in. I also see Monsieur Lemay. Well, I don't know if we have it on the agenda, but, you know, we were supposed to be in Quebec, and we are all, you know, relatively heartbroken, I think, that we're not there. One of the many sacrifices, of course, but.
Hi, this is Jean Hunoff from South Dakota.
Hey, Jean. Matthew, I couldn't quite hear you. Your audio's a little low, but what were you saying? Need to speak up?
Yeah, we had quite an agenda for all of you guys, so it's all going to be postponed another time.
We'll be back.
Tim, it's JJ. I've been on for about 10 minutes, but I'm checking in with you, letting you know.
Tim, do you feel like we've gotten most of the people who said they were able to make it on the call so far?
I do. I know that we're going to do, our staff will sort of do the check to make sure we have the quorum. I'm positive that we do, just glancing, but we'll do that off, you know, kind of on our own. So yeah, Speaker Voss, you're up. Take it away.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. We appreciate everybody taking a minute out of your day. This is definitely a first, and hopefully after this year a last. I do want to thank everybody for getting on by Zoom, and I want to really thank the staff who, for those of you who've touched base with NCSL during the course of the last several months, they have literally been spectacular, right? For any of the legislators and staff who are on, who've utilized the services, I know we have been singing your praises, but every single word of it is deserved, Tim. So for the staff who are on here, we appreciate all of you as we try to navigate the different CARES Acts and the different people who are dealing with all the issues in Washington and Mali. Thank you very much for all the information you've given to us. I did think it'd be appropriate for us just to take a moment, if we were in person, of course we would do this, but I think it's appropriate for us just to take a moment of silence for the death, that happened obviously over the course of the past 2 weeks with, Mr. Floyd and all of the folks who have had to deal with the protests and the challenges that have arisen in all of our states. So if we could just take a moment of silence, I think that'd be appropriate. Thank you all very much. I appreciate that. So today we want it to be a participatory meeting. So even though we are all on Zoom, which is a different format, I know we hopefully most everybody has utilized this before, so you know how to mute yourself and unmute yourself, which is the top little blue box at the top of your picture. If you have an opportunity to either ask a question, you can go in the chat function, which also on that same little blue box, you can ask a question. I know the NCSL staff is really going to be monitoring that. So we want to have people ask questions. If for some reason you don't know how to do that, just raise your hand and one of the staff will make sure that they point it out if I miss it for some reason. But I hope that today is really going to be a great opportunity for us to reconnect. I am so sad that we are not able to be in Quebec City, which is spectacular this time of the year and something that I know we were really looking forward to. So I just want to make sure for Matthew who's on that this is a rain check. It doesn't mean you get out of this. We still get the chance to go back to Quebec because many of us really were looking forward to that. So with that, I appreciate everybody, and I'll turn it over to Tim as he starts to go through some of the agenda item topics.
Thanks, Speaker Voss. We have scripted this all out at some level, but we're really eager for people to jump in if you have any questions. You know, we put a huge priority on the value of transparency, both internally as well as with you. So our officers, all legislators and legislative staff for that matter. You know, it was actually a year ago, almost to the day that this committee had the confidence in me to become the executive director, and it's kind of didn't even occur to me that it's been 1 year because time has been in this strange warp, especially over the last few months. But as I was reflecting on sort of giving a quick report, I thought about the fact that we have changed and adapted so much, and that was before coronavirus, then BC times, as I like to call them. And the NCSL staff since then has stepped up in really phenomenal ways. I mean, you know, part of my job is to brag on the great work that the NCSL staff do. And that is not hard to do because the level of productivity, the level of response has just been phenomenal. You're going to hear a lot more about that as we move forward. But we have done numerous changes, reorganizational internally. Our budget has been dramatically altered in a number of different ways. The executive leadership team is, you know, almost very different, you know, massively different than it was. So it's been a really awesome year. I'm looking forward to kind of making some kind of an annual report, which normally would have been at the annual meeting, but when we decide to get together again as an executive committee. But I'm just so proud of the staff, and I just want to make sure that everybody recognizes how hard they've been working since we shifted to telework. You know, I guess about 10, 11, 12 weeks ago. It was really seamless. We had a pretty sound telework policy in place. But boy, the work seemed to intensify. I think some of us thought, oh, this is great. We don't have to drive in and out of to the office anymore, or take the metro in and out of the office. But even though we now have like an extra hour or, you know, hour and a half or 30 minutes, depending on people's commutes, the work has just more than overflowed to fill that up. And that's a good thing because we know that you guys and legislators, legislative staff are, you know, relying on us to meet our mission. So thank you for having the confidence in me and in the NCSL staff, and for, you know, for in particular the people on this call for caring about this organization and giving us your time and helping us, you know, govern and be the best at what we can do. I just want to say just a few things in sort of my upfront report. One is, you know, thank you especially to the officers of NCSL. I don't think they knew exactly what they were getting into because no one saw this global pandemic coming. Certainly when I assumed this job, that wasn't high on my list of things to keep an eye on, but we're all adapting to that. And we have, and you're going to hear a lot about that throughout the course of the next few minutes. And we're going to try to keep this pretty tight to around an hour. If that, we do have to take some important votes. We have to vote on the NCSL budget. We're voting on a resolution that has to do with NCSL's bylaws and our annual meeting. You'll hear about that in a few minutes. So that's and we got one big exciting announcement to make, which will come up during the budget finance report that Speaker Psyche is going to do. So I'll leave that there. Speaker Voss, we had not scripted to have a moment of silence, but I appreciate that you did that. I know the NCSL staff and I are, you know, have been deeply affected by the killing of George Floyd and you know, the way the nation has excuse me, has been thinking about that and reflecting on it, and race in America. And it's something that's a priority internally at NCSL as well. We're looking at, you know, how we address these issues as well as our diversity and inclusion policies and what we can do better on that. So, so I just wanted to say, again, that wasn't, you surprised me a little bit with that, but I appreciate you doing it because I think it's really important. We cannot ignore what's going on in our nation and for us as a people. And of course, the NCSL staff and legislators and legislative staff are, at the front of, looking for solutions to all of our problems, including the issues of racism in America, as well as the health crisis that looms with coronavirus and the economic crisis that we're sort of all figuring out right now. So thank you, Speaker Voss. With that, I just want to leave it there and let's get into the agenda. I think you're the chair, and I'll take any questions either now or at any point along the lines about the budget or anything else we're working on.
Great, thank you very much, Tim. So I think what we would probably do is let's start with approval of the minutes from the last meeting, and then I'll turn it back over to Tim where we can kind of go through your director's report. So with that, is there anybody who would like to make, I gotta make my screen bigger. Is there anybody who'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes as presented by the staff?
Motion to approve.
Okay, it's been moved by Senator Alvarado and seconded to approve the minutes as circulated. I am going to assume that for these votes that we're going to do a lot of things by acclamation since I can't scroll through and see everybody saying yes or no. So without objection, the minutes are approved. Okay, next up, I'm going to call on Director Story just to give us a 5-minute, and I'm going to try to limit people to what it actually says in my script. So we have about 5 minutes, Tim, for you to just go through and give us the highlights of what's happened since we were last together.
Well, here's the first surprise. I kind of did that just now. That was really good to be my report. So I'll give you back those 5 minutes. I have to do a couple of housekeeping things, which is that make sure that everybody understands that if you want to ask a question, do that in the chat bar, which you said. I just want to underscore that. You can also wave the hand icon or put that up in the corner of the Zoom as people do. Our staff will be looking out for that. You can also unmute and jump in if you want to do that. We are live streaming this on NCSL's YouTube channel. We didn't want so many boxes in the Zoom of maybe the NCSL staff who get to attend by at least being in the back of the room of the executive committee. So I know a number of them are interested and hopefully are watching on the YouTube channel, as well as our foundation partners, which, of all the things we miss, not being in person together in Quebec or anywhere for that matter, Indianapolis soon. It's just the time we get to see and visit. This becomes a community, of course, and that really also includes our many foundation partners and the other people who participate in these meetings. So we genuinely miss being together. But we are live on YouTube. We're also recording this. And we'll do the minutes as we always do. So, I didn't really get into a lot of details on my report because they'll come up throughout the rest of the time. Suffice it to say, it has been just massively, extraordinarily active since we last met in Austin in January. And you'll hear a lot of details vis-a-vis the LSCC report, the outreach committee report, and the others that are coming up. So that's it, Speaker Ross. Here's your time.
Thank you very much, Tim. I appreciate that. Next up, I am going to call on Speaker Psyche, who is going to give a report from the Budget, Finance, and Rules Committee. Our hope is that will be around 7 minutes.
Okay, you can turn the timer on now, Robin. Very much.
Thanks.
We had a really good meeting this morning, and I wanted to just thank at the outset Tim and the staff for all of their work with all of our budget matters. So the Budget Committee voted on a couple of items today that we will be asking the Executive Committee to also vote on. The first was a resolution governing some of our procedural matters, and the second was the fiscal year 2021 budget. So I want to start off with the resolution. Martha Wigton and John Heinig helped take the lead on drafting this resolution. I want to thank them for doing that. I want to ask Martha if she could present on this.
My pleasure. Thank you. We have had some great discussions as a group of officers because in 45 years, NCSL has never missed having an annual meeting. And our bylaws do not provide for missing an annual meeting, and there's certain functions that we take care of as a matter of business during that meeting. 3 things, in fact. We typically vote on a budget for consideration. We vote on policies, and we also vote on a slate of candidates for the executive committee and also your new officers. Well, in the absence of having this, the bylaws are silent. So as officers, when we made that wrenching decision to cancel this year's summit, the annual meeting needed to be addressed. And as we spoke about this, it just seemed like we needed to do something for the record. And after discussing this with several of our parliamentarians and staff folks, especially want to give a shout out to Susan Kanar for letting me vent with her and discuss this, we decided that we needed something for the record to give some history on what we were doing, why we were doing it, to try and explain, and to also make sure that we could still carry on the business for our conference during this coming year. So if you looked on the first page of our resolution, it addresses why we are doing this. It's because we have a pandemic, we're not able to gather in large groups. Our bylaws provide for an annual meeting. That annual meeting has been canceled. And if you look on page 2, it explains now what we want to authorize and what we want to put on the record as a matter of transparency for the future. And that is that we can meet and vote remotely, online, by phone, whatever remotely means in this day and age. That the summit is canceled, and because there's no business meeting, we're going to authorize ourselves to be able to vote. But that also means that as an executive committee and the membership therein, we are going to stay in force. And I guess let that last piece resonate with you. I think your officers, we are all asking that you stay in place with us and continue to help with the governance of the conference for the coming year. Asking your service to continue. I think that there are so many benefits in doing that, in that this is really rough times, the budgets are tight, and having your experience and a little bit of time under your belts and not having any turnover can really benefit us and the NCSL staff and keep our voice strong at DC when we need it the most now too. So I'm happy to take any questions. These 1975 bylaws probably need an update since they don't talk about pandemics, and I think we'll be updating a lot of documents here shortly. But to that end, I would ask for your favorable consent. We certainly hope that you agree that this is the best course for the conference, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any chat questions?
John Kavanaugh with a question.
Senator, yes.
Yeah, just a quick question. I know in a lot of, and I don't know if this affects me, because quite frankly, I have no idea if I'm my first or second or whatever term I'm in. It all becomes a blur after a while. But in a lot of organizations, you know, a partial term counts as a full term. And I know we have term limits on how many terms you can serve. So will this extra year count as a separate term, which might preclude some people from being reappointed if they so desired?
If I may, Mr. Speaker, it would be a continuation of this existing term, so it is still 1 year. We would consider this still 1 year.
Okay, great.
Yes, sir.
Tim has his hand up. Tim.
Just to even clarify that a little clearer, the terms are not defined as 1 year in the bylaws, John. What makes this sort of unique is that a term in our bylaws for the executive committee and the officers, a term is defined as from one annual meeting to the next annual meeting. Right. So we don't use the word year, we don't use the word months, we don't say from June 1st to June 30th, or I'm sorry, to July 1st. It literally says the term is from one meeting to the next. So essentially this means that your term, you'll still serve one term, but it'll be 24 months long.
Okay, just want to make sure we didn't have an unintended consequence.
Yep, good question.
So it was moved by Staff Chair Wigden and seconded by Speaker Psyche to adopt the resolution NCSL Executive Committee Resolution 20-1, allowing for the 3 items that Martha just described to be in effect for the balance of the year. Is there any other discussion?
Yeah, Speaker Boss, let me just add that we will also begin a process to kind of evaluate our bylaws and to see how they can be modernized. That process will be starting up soon.
Great point. So the assumption is that as we go through this, that will also be reported back to us prior to the end of this next year. So before we get to Chicago, we'll have some updates ready to go. All right. I don't see anybody else in the chat box. I don't see anybody else that has questions. So if not, if you could take yourselves off mute, or you can just give me a thumbs up in the screen. All those in favor of adopting resolution NCSL 20-1 will signify by saying aye or giving a thumbs up.
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, anyone opposed? Hearing no opposition, the resolution is adopted. Back to Speaker Psyche for a discussion of the proposed budget.
Okay, thank you, members, for your vote. So the second item is the budget. Part of the discussion will also include the fiscal year 20 budget, our current budget. So as you know, during this pandemic, as a result of this pandemic, NCSL had to take action just like all of our state legislatures did in addressing the current year budget and the next budget. And I want to thank the staff for being proactive and realistic in how they address this. Like many legislatures, the focus was to look at vacancies at the staff level, restrictions, reduction in capital costs. So I'll give you the top line numbers, and Tim can fill in with more of the details. But for the fiscal year 20 budget, and the fiscal year runs from July 1st through June 30, 2020. So the top line for the fiscal year 20 budget was that revenues were decreased from $21 million to about $20.6 million. And expenditures were reduced from about $23.9 million to $23 million. Again, the numbers are available in the executive committee book at page 26. And there's also a budget book that was emailed to everyone. And that's on page 28 of the budget book. Couple of other highlights for the fiscal going into the fiscal year 2021 budget was that the officers did make a decision to keep dues constant. So the dues increase that was approved for this coming year will not go into effect, and Tim can explain that in detail. Also, NCSL did benefit from a PPP loan. So Tim, did you want to go over any other of fiscal year 20 details before we go to fiscal year 21?
No, I just, well, people say, do you want to say anything else? And then someone says, no, I don't. And then they proceed to say something else. So, but I guess I fell into that trap. I will say that we put the lockdown in place pretty early on in March, when it was, we had some sense that things could get tight fast. Of course, the cancellation summit comes in next fiscal year, but we had other meetings that were canceled and had the effect of on us. Including our redistricting meetings that were, really blockbusters in a lot of ways. We also, froze hiring, and that's going to carry through to reductions of FTEs for the FY21 budget. And then just not being in our building has saved us quite a bit of money, in utilities and water and janitorial services and those things. So we're actually in good shape to wrap up FY20. The revenue from the summit in Nashville, was really what made FY20 a successful budget year for us. And even given the effects of the last few months, we're going to end with a good surplus in terms of that budget. So which is in our cash flow. So thanks, Speaker Psyche.
Okay, are there any questions on the fiscal year 20 budget scenario? Any questions? Okay, if not, we'll go to fiscal year 21. So I'll give you the top line numbers again. The proposed budget was $20.6 million. It will be reduced to $15.7 million. Expenses were originally budgeted at $23 million and will be reduced to $15.7 million. as I mentioned, this fiscal year 21 budget does not include the 3% increase in dues that we had approved last year. And also the other bottom line is that if this budget remains intact, then we are looking at a $44,000 surplus at the end of the year. So Tim, do you want to fill in any more details?
Yeah, I think there's a number of important things to call attention to on this. So this budget is like $4.5 million less than the budget you approved 1 year ago. That is largely impacted by the summit, because not only is that a huge revenue, but it's a huge expense. So, but then we have net revenue from that. So that leads to real cuts in the overall budget. So this represents a number of reductions in budgeting. Primarily, we are largely driven by our personnel cost. So this reflects a reduction of our general fund FTEs by 13.1% or 13.9, 12.9%, 12.9 FTEs reduction in this budget. So that's over $1 million in savings to the budget. Those were those were all vacancies. I think we shifted a few of those to grant supported mostly through the foundation support. We also are cutting in our publications and revenue around the magazine, going to a digital format, except for 2 printed publications a year, the State Legislators Magazine. Of course, we lose interest income based on kind of just, where we park our cash and the interest that comes off of that. We have no merit pool for staff in this budget. I think the staff fully understand the fiscal economic world that we are in, and that we're not able to do that in this budget. Perhaps we'll be pleasantly surprised and we'll be back here with the executive committee looking at budget amendments. That would certainly be my hope. But realistically right now, that was not something we can include. Building expenses are reduced substantially, and I'll explain a little bit more about that when Speaker Psyche makes another report here in just a second. Staff travel is reduced, constituent travel, stipends for constituent travel is reduced. So again, overall, this budget reflects $4.5 million less than the budget that was submitted last year, but the huge bulk of that is because we're not holding the summit, which is not only a huge revenue, but is also a huge expense for the conference. But it also includes a lot of real cuts. And again, I want to thank the officers. They were the ones that said this is not the time to raise dues. So we're holding the dues constant. And I should say, in terms of the FY20 budget, appropriations that were very strong. We are very optimistic that we'll get dues from all 50 states. At this point, I think we only have 2 states and Puerto Rico have not paid. We know for a fact that California is in process, so we should get that soon. And Puerto Rico is actually sending their dues, not all of it. They have a huge fiscal crisis in Puerto Rico that predated coronavirus. But we're very excited about the fact that we know at least we'll have 49 states and then also Quebec and the Virgin Islands and Guam and Puerto Rico as dues paying members in FY20. And I think we're going to do well with the FY21 appropriations, because I think legislators and staff are really supportive right now across the board. It doesn't matter what kind of state, whether it's big or small, Republican, Democrat, regionally. I think we've got a lot of strong support out there. Thank you, Speaker Psyche.
Okay, are there any questions or comments? Any questions or comments? Okay, if not, I guess Speaker, could I, Speaker Voss, I'll move to adopt the fiscal year 21 budget.
Okay, it's been moved by Speaker Psyche and seconded by
I'm happy to sign it.
Sue Resin. Yep, I just saw. Thank you. All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the budget as presented by the Budget and Finance Committee. Any other questions that have not yet had a chance to be answered? If not, again, all those in favor of approving the budget as presented will either say yes or give us the thumbs up.
Aye. Yes.
Aye.
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 They didn't say you.
Aye.
All right, anyone opposed? If not, motion passes. Great job, Speaker Psyche.
Thank you, members. So last item is actually good news, as Tim mentioned. On June 15th, we will be paying off our Denver building, our Denver headquarters. So the last payment of $940,000 will be made. And I think, Tim, do you want to add to that?
Very briefly, thank you to the officers. It was really at their impetus that we started exploring this. We transferred the wire transfer today of around $940,000 to retire the bonds on the building. So as of Monday, assuming all the paperwork is in order, we will be the proud owners of a terrific headquarters property in Denver, Colorado, which of course we don't get to use right now, but we'll hopefully be using it soon.
Are there any questions or comments? Any questions? If not, Speaker Boss, that's our report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Speaker Psyche. Next up, we are going to have the report from the Committee on Outreach and Member Services. I think Representative Pupolo is on the Zoom call, and he is going to give the report. And they tell me to make sure you keep it to no more than 5 minutes. Representative?
He's on audio, so he just has to unmute his phone because he had to be on the phone. Angela was on earlier.
Well, how about if we do this? Why don't we turn it over to Senator Treat, where we'd have the opportunity to have Greg.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Am I back on?
Yeah, thanks,
you're good.
Representative.
All right. Again, I apologize for being just here via audio, but I showed my pandemic beard the other day in a Zoom meeting, and that's all we were going to get. But again, I appreciate the opportunity to present, and I was actually going to take Tim's extra 5 minutes, but I will keep it brief, Mr. Speaker. Our meeting was historic, like the executive committee that we're in right now. It actually was the first committee meeting online. Certainly one of the benefits that we saw at our meeting, and I know that everybody has, is the hard work, and we were able to hear from the input directly from NCSL staff who approved the content, really go above and beyond. And I said at our meeting, it's been echoed here a few times, and I want to reiterate the fact that the hard work and dedication, really without missing a beat, Tim and everybody at NCSL, the staff, and everybody for their hard work and continuing to make sure that we stay informed and in the loop. Let's begin. If we turn to page 34 in the executive committee book, you'll see a report provided by NCSL's Public Affairs and Broadcasting Director, Nick Bullock. A couple items I wanted to note. First, January through the end of May, NCSL earned 22,000 media mentions, which is a record, in fact, for the organization. And it continues to earn more traffic on social media platforms each day. Nick and his team initiated a new online product called Living Room Town Halls. By the end of May, we have produced 6 episodes where Nick interviews subjects such as our staff chair, Martha Wigton. Across all platforms, the events have reached 150,000 plus people. They're held weekly, and I encourage you to watch one of them when you get a chance. All of us here at NCSL have been a tremendous source. We know that's been a tremendous source of policy information on the COVID-19 crisis. Not only have they produced special sessions to many of our legislators and have what I believe to be the best and most timely information on the subject, certainly they've truly become a national resource, and we can be very proud of each and every one of them. I want to turn your attention to page 37. Between the crisis hit in mid-March through the end of May, the organization's COVID-19 pages were reviewed more than 1.8 million times. And already in June, it has passed 2 million. Again, a record for the organization. But we continue to see how valuable and how timely the information is. You can see that on that page, too, that will follow how the organization pivoted quickly, producing a record number of webinars, blogs, podcasts, and a special digital issue of the state legislature's magazine. This is, again, a tribute to the entire organization. And remember, they did all this while working at home, which, again, up and running, didn't miss a beat. The COVID-19 crisis, unfortunately, as we talked about, also canceled the 2020 Legislative Summit in Indianapolis. One of our lead hosts, the esteemed Senator Eric Bassler, who sits on this committee, shared with us how he and his entire team addressed the cancellation. The silver lining is that NCSL had an opening for the 2023 meeting, and the senator and his team and everybody in Indiana really stepped up to the plate. Were able to work with a good majority of their sponsors. They're going to stay on to support this meeting. I mentioned at the meeting, was looking forward to going to St. Elmo's Steakhouse this year, but I'm going to have to put that on my 2023 calendar. Unless Tim, you want to take us out there and have a dry run and see how good that steak is ahead of time, I'd be up for that. The host state has a lot of responsibilities, Mr. Chairman, and the Senator and House Speaker Todd Huston deserve our praise for being able to slam on the brakes and make a hard turn and continue on. But I know it's going to be a great summit 3 years from now. NCSL's meetings director, Kristen Chazet, shared the schedule for our upcoming legislative summit, which has us meeting next August in Chicago, in Denver for 2022, mentioned Indianapolis in 2023, and Louisville in 2024. Kristen and her team ended up canceling around 35 meetings, which had a potential financial impact of $675,000. They were able to negotiate out all of those meetings, resulting in $0 being absorbed by the NCSL. And they are currently working to shift all the contracts they had in place to 2023. As I mentioned, the organization is doing a record number of webinars, but NCSL is still looking at creative ways to engage legislators and staff. The committee then weighed on potential 3-day meeting called NCSL Base Camp in 2020. The name being used as a clever nod to the legislative summit. Communications Director Gene Rose and his team are looking at creating a highly productive event, all online this September, from the 15th to the 17th. They're taking our feedback and we'll announcing the event sometime in early July. We received a report on the State Legislators Magazine from Publishing and Digital Content Director Leslie Kennedy. In this digital age, NCSL made a decision that will save about $100,000 in printing and distribution costs by cutting the magazine down to just 2 issues per year, one in January and one in July. They're planning them to keepsake issues with deeper articles about the institution. The magazine does have a strong brand with legislators and staff, and so Leslie and her team are working on a digital newsroom that plan to launch in early July as well. Finally, we received a report from State Policy Research Director Laura Tobler, who was online, and she can answer any questions. But I want to direct your attention to page 41 of our Executive Committee book. We do have an action item on this report, President Boss. There are 3 proposals that require our approval to move forward. I'm going to run down them very briefly. The first is a $300,000 grant from the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, in which NCSL will provide education and information to state legislators on vaccines with an emphasis on COVID-19. Second is a $100,000 grant from the Buffett Early Childhood Fund. This funding provides ongoing learning opportunities for past participants of NCSL's Early Learning Fellows program and makes improvements to the current program. And finally, a $100,000 grant from Western Governors University, which will provide legislators with resources and learning opportunities on competency-based post-secondary education options. Mr. Chairman, that's the committee report. I move to adopt and accept all 3 proposals, and I make a motion that the executive committee approve these proposals. Thank you again, and again, I just want to commend everybody at NCSL for their continued hard work and dedication, and look forward to seeing everybody again, hopefully in December, live.
Thank you, Representative Pupolo. He has made a motion to approve the grants as presented. Is there any discussion or questions about those? Seeing none, all those in favor will either say aye or give a thumbs up.
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Hearing no opposition, the motion passes, and we are now on to Senator Treat, who will give us an update on the federal state activities.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you all for joining. Sorry for the paint in the background. I tried to paint and it didn't match perfectly. So if you see a bunch of scars, that's from my 12, 10, and 8-year-old. But I know these state and federal matters have dominated a lot of my time in the Oklahoma State Senate, of trying to figure out unemployment and trying to figure out how the CARES Act money is going. So this the work of this committee is important. And I want to recognize the other officers of the subcommittee, Senator Carlucci from New York, who's the co-chair with me, John Heining from Texas, the staff chair, and John Snyder from Kentucky, the staff vice chair. So thank you for your work on that. I'm going to read my notes real quick and then take any questions people may have. NCSL continues to be a premier resource for state legislatures during the COVID-19 global pandemic. In addition to all the resources and analysis available on the website, NCSL has participated in 19 briefings on the federal response to COVID-19 for individual state chambers, legislative committees, and caucuses. This is in addition to the Zoom-like meetings that we're having today with fiscal, education, labor, and workforce chairs, legislative and fiscal officers, and the NCSL standing committee members. We hosted our first virtual Capitol Hill briefing on June 5th for the select Senate staff. Mississippi Senator Briggs Hobson and NCSL Executive Committee member Representative Marvin Abney from Rhode Island discussed fiscal conditions in their states brought on by COVID-19 and the need for additional flexible funding for states in the next stimulus package. NCSL is advocating for $300 billion in flexible assistance, as well as an FMAP increase in infrastructure funding. More details can be found on page 49 of the book, and it details some of the requests on stimulus package and the flexibility. I'm also going to mention that Senator Carlucci, the co-chair, was in Washington, D.C. in early March, as we talked about our last meeting, to discuss privacy and consumer protections with majority and minority Hill staff. And other non-COVID-19 activities included working on reauthorization of both federal surface transportation and federal water infrastructure programs, federal broadband investment, funding for the National Guard, and issues related to the census. The last item on page 50 includes a link to the more than 20 letters NCSL has submitted to the Hill and the administration since our last meeting. I encourage you to look at that and click on that link. It will take you to all of 20 of those letters. Mr. President, that concludes my report, and I'd be happy to yield to any questions.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions for Senator Treat? Thank you very much for your report. Next up, we have NCSL Staff Chair Martha Wigton, who's going to give the report of the Legislative Staff Coordinating Committee.
Thanks. I just want to report that the Legislative Staff Coordinating Committee met last week virtually. It was our first and best virtual meeting yet. I'm sorry that we're not in Quebec. However, everyone was there, present, and really active. So it was an excellent meeting, and I was just so happy to see everyone connected, even at such a busy time. A brief update about what we discussed and some of our priorities. We have responsibility for training exercises and programming for staff. And in lieu of being there in Summit and hosting meetings in person this fall, many of those will be rescheduled, and we are not pivoting, but pirouetting, because that requires a little more skill and a little more grace, and everyone is shifting how we're doing our operating now to some online training, and we're not going to miss a beat. We're just going to redo how we're doing things this time. The staff hub that you've heard about is now also canceled. That was bringing together most of our professional development associations under one umbrella to be held here in Atlanta. And in lieu of having that in 2020, we'll move it to 2022. But all of the work that's been done to this point is still relevant and pertinent, and we'll be using that at a later date. The Legislative Staff Management Institute, you know, this is our premier training for staff, and it's supported by our foundation dollars. The foundation has continued to do that even in spite of the situation that we find ourselves in. So thank you to those folks for sharing $50,000 to underwrite the cost of the funding for this program. It keeps the tuition down for us. And this year, we're going to do it digitally, and it'll be done over the course of several weeks. What's positive about this is, once again, we're going to pirouette, and doing it online allows us to reach a cohort that maybe we haven't reached before. Those with small children who couldn't be gone for a week at a time. It's a 7-day program. So we're looking on the bright side for that. We have 50 applications, which is more than enough we needed to fill a class and break even. And those folks will be selected here shortly. We have finalized the NCSL guide to writing a personnel manual, something that you'll be able to use in all of your legislatures to serve your personnel needs. It's a guide, it's not a legal manual, but that was kind of one of the staff goals of John Heining. And we're really glad to see that happening. Although now we may have to update it for pandemic, but it is ready to roll and it'll be hot off the press soon. We also have our Building Democracy podcasts, which are rolling out. Those have the most downloads to date of any NCSL podcast. Look for more episodes of that to come and share the news. Great way to learn about our democracy online. One of the highest priorities that I had as NCSL staff chair was for the Legislative Staff Certificate Program, something for brand new legislative staff, to give them an overview of different components of the legislative institution, to include fiscal, communications, model code of conduct. For those of you who have personal staff, this is ideal for them to get kind of a toe in on different pieces of what we do in each section of the legislature. That will still happen, and we're going to do that virtually as well over October on Fridays. We'll have staff coming in from NCSL as well as some others. And we're going to launch that, even though we can't do it in person. We're still expecting a really good cohort. And finally, the last week in May, we had our Legislative Staff Week. NCSL gives us a platform for recognizing staff, celebrating the work that we do, and sharing some of our best practices. This year, we focused on resiliency, which seemed to be the topic of the day. And we had over 400 standing ovations from peer-to-peer and also from legislators that recognized staff online with shout outs of a job well done or something extra special that they had accomplished. So that was really exciting to see that. I need to give a shout out to NCSL staff who have done more than pirouette for all of us and supporting us, not only with the policy pieces of things, but connecting us on a federal level with folks who could answer our questions. I understand from Laura Tobler that they have answered over 500 requests on policy matters since March, which is incredible. And for those of us boots on the ground in our offices, that makes us look good because we're able to respond to our members quickly. So thank you for that. And since they're doing all the pirouetting, we know who our Barishnikov is. Thank you, Tim Story, for your leadership at this time. You've supported all of our staff and we're very grateful for that. The platforms that you've provided to us to be able to continue our work unabated has been magnificent. And LSCC went off without a hitch. And we experimented and we were very successful. We're getting feedback from our members on how we can improve that, but I think we're moving in the right direction and modernizing in a lot of ways what we do. And then finally, I want to say regarding the resolution that we just passed, I am so excited to think that all of our executive committee staffers will stay in place. What an amazing team. The energy that everybody's bringing together, the continuity that this will provide for us and what we're doing is just going to be phenomenal. And I cannot wait to see what we get done. Thank you to my staff vice chair, JJ Gentry, and John Heining as well, who've shown exceptional leadership. We're doing this all together. So that concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions for Martha? Seeing none, excellent job as always. Next up, we normally would have Speaker Mitzi Johnson from Vermont. I believe that she is still presiding on the floor. So as long as she has not yet joined the Zoom call, I'm going to call on Caroline Carlson, who will quickly give us an update on what's happened with the NCSL Foundation, its members, and how it's impacting NCSL.
Thank you, Speaker Voss. And thanks to all of you for being here today. And a special thanks to the foundation sponsors that are on the YouTube channel watching. The foundation report is on page 51 and 52 of the executive committee book. We have an update to The revenue, we are at 2,580,000, so 50,000 more than previously reported. So that's tremendous. We are still at, we have 47 platinum sponsors. We wanted to recognize the 4 that have come in that are brand new and the 3 that have upgraded from the gold level. So I promised those sponsors I would read their names out loud, so we'll do that very quickly. Netflix, Online Lenders Alliance, Qualtrics, and State Government Affairs Council, thank you so much. And then the 3 gold upgrades to platinum are America's Credit Unions, Google, and Vistra Energy. I wanted to also say that the foundation is mimicking what NCSL is doing at this time and delaying the dues increase. So that will not happen July 1, which is what the board originally planned and approved at the January meeting in Austin. So we are delaying that dues increase. And then I'm just really pleased the sponsors have stuck with us. We thank you for your support and participation. We look forward to working with you and we miss you so much. So thank you. That concludes my report.
Fantastic, Caroline. I just want to echo that I think if it was up to everybody in the executive committee, we would give a double thumbs up to all of our sponsors and our folks who have really stepped up. We appreciate you being involved in NCSL because as we get through a challenging time, both in the public and the private sector, as many people have said to me, this too shall pass, right? We'll get back to the times when things return to normal, but we appreciate everybody staying involved at NCSL and the great work you help us do. So thank you, Caroline. Any questions for Caroline before we go to our next item? All right, great job. Thank you very much. So the last item on our agenda, and I just do want to thank the fellow officers that I get the pleasure to serve with. So on the line, we know Speaker Bedke, Speaker Psyche, and Speaker Johnson, along with JJ, Martha, and John, and Tim, and all the management staff at NCSL and the NCSL team who are watching from home. We have been through some tough times in the past 3 months, both in our professional, public, and our private lives. But I think at the end of the day, we're all going to come out stronger. And that's what NCSL has really helped us to remember, that no matter how quickly things change, people adapt even quicker. And I think that's what NCSL has done a great job doing. I think that we are here witnessing our first virtual meeting. Hopefully this does not become the norm, because while Zoom is, I always joke that conference calls stink. Zoom is pretty good, but in person is the way it should be. And I think that's what we're hoping for to have sometime soon. So we did want to have just a quick discussion as to our thoughts for having our next opportunity to get together. So the officers are planning a strategic planning retreat in person. We are gathering together in Chicago in July. If you remember, a year ago, we had talked about our strategic planning process where we have hired a firm to work with all of us to kind of hone our goals with our new executive director and his new management team. So we're going to continue that process in July, and then we'll have an opportunity to come back and speak with folks. Last year, we had talked about not having an October meeting because especially for those of us in the House, and now that we finally have 4 speakers leading the organization who all have elections in this year, no senators to say, it's no big deal. We finally have agreed we're not having an October executive committee meeting, and that was PC or pre-corona. So that's a good thing for us, but we need to think about having our meeting in December. So we'll keep you involved. I'm hoping we can do one in person, but we'll have to wait and see how all of those things go with the several next months. But I'm going to turn it over to Tim just for his thoughts. We had a brief conversation, but to at least where you have thought about this going and the staff discussions that you've had prior to our call.
Yeah, we don't have a whole lot to say. I think we might propose another Zoom virtual. We're under an hour, so it hasn't been horrific, I guess, on time, because it's just so hard to stay focused in this setting. And of course, we miss the social aspects and getting together with everyone. So I think we're going to look at, as if you picked up, we're going to do this event, this base camp event, as we prepare to summit next year in September. So maybe around that, we'll look at a virtual. We'll propose that with the officers. But I think it's almost certainly going to have to be a virtual thing. And then we'll look at December, which will be in Washington in conjunction with our Capitol Forum. We still don't know what that looks like in terms of gathering people under the guidelines that we've been given from all the different authorities that we're paying attention to. So that's all I'll say about that. Can I loop up and then close out and then you can wrap us up? I just want to say two things. When I want to again circle back just a second for Senator Bassler, who I hope is still on the line in Indiana. It really killed us that we could not be there. They were as prepared as they could have ever been, and Speaker Houston, the two of them, and were really leading the charge. But just want to say I caught earlier when we were going through that report, and just I wanted to double down on thanking Indiana and what a bummer it is that we couldn't do this, because it was shaping up to be a blockbuster. And then, you know, we can't say thank you enough. So thank you.
All right, with that, this is awesome. You did keep it under an hour. We got good business done today. Everybody had a chance to stay in the comfort of their home state, which is a nice thing as we're working through this. So on behalf of the officers, thank you to the executive committee members who took the time out of your day to attend by Zoom. It went off pretty much without a hitch, and that is just another testament to how fantastic the staff at NCSL does, because even from afar, they still help make all of us look good. So Tim and all of your staff, we hope you have a wonderful summer. To all the members of the executive committee, thank you for joining us today. Stay safe, and we'll look forward to talking again as NCSL business permits. Take care.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
See you.